I am so glad you're here today because I need your help with this one. So I can't wait to walk through this with you today. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's awesome.
Now, before we dig into the big business building and life balance ideas, can you tell us a little bit more about your story and how you landed where you are today, helping women build their business with balance?
Yeah, absolutely. So it kind of started about 7 or 8 years ago when I had my little baby. And I was in the process of building a portrait studio. So I had a portrait business and it was still very low key, like, a few weddings and a few portraits. That was kind of where it was at. When my son was born, I went straight back to work. I wanted to keep the momentum going. And of course, that was a foolish mistake. But a few months after that, we ended up separating. So when my son was 15 months old, I became a single parent. And that's where the balance really went out the door. I had none. So I was trying to balance a little boy who was, a toddler who needed his mom. I was trying to work really hard to support us and provide an income for us, pay his childcare fees, pay the mortgage. And so I was completely driven at work. And what was happening was, of course, he was doing 46 hours a week, some weeks in preschool. I was exhausted. I'd work right through every second weekend. So I'd do 14-day weeks. I'd work at night once he was asleep. I was sleep deprived because any mum knows that children often don't like to sleep at night, especially if they're feeling stressed or their parents are stressed. So he was picking up on that. And basically it was hell. It was absolute hell. And there were certainly times where I found myself, on the floor in my kitchen with my head on my knees, just wondering what the heck am I doing? This is not how I thought motherhood would look like. This is not what I thought running a business would look like. This is not working. And it took me a long time because there was a huge mindset shift that I had to work through. Back then I had to kind of reprogram how I was thinking about things. So it did take me quite a few years before I was actually able to achieve balance. And once I did get that balance, it was amazing. I was able to, run my business successfully. The business was going really well by the stage. I had a great team of people on by the time I sold my business a year ago. And I was able to be at my son at school pickup. Like that to me is such a big thing. If I can be there at 3 o'clock to pick him up and bring him home, knowing that everything's still operating, that was huge. I was able to take school holidays off, and rather than put him all the time into a school holiday program, those things were huge. And once I realized that I could have a successful business and be a good mom and do it on my own, like I'm still a single parent, so I'm still juggling, things just got easy and light, and I enjoyed my business again. And so that sort of led me down the road. Once I sold my business and I knew I wanted to be a photography coach or a business coach for photographers, it's really only been in the last 6 months that I've realized that the people I'm helping the most are people who are mums, who are juggling business and babies and trying to find that balance. So I'm really kind of moving more into that line now so that I can help people do both. There's no point hustling and having a great business, making a heap of money if you're sacrificing so much of the important stuff. You don't get that back. So that's kind of my mission, and I'm moving more and more into it, and I'm loving it.
I'm so passionate about single moms in business as well because I am one as well and have been from the beginning with my kids too. And it's it's not easy for sure, especially when you're first figuring it out. It was the same for us, but it gives you that freedom that you otherwise don't have. And as a single mother, especially, you want to be able to go to recital and you want it because there's no other, parent necessarily. And in my case, I was an only parent. So there was no one else to step in to do those things. You have to be all the things in all the places, and having your own business gives you the freedom to do that. And I think it's such a great solution, but you're right. It's not an easy solution, and you got to have some framework in place to make that work so that you can do all of the things and have that flexibility. So I just love this topic. I love talking about this.
I don't think it's talked enough about, to be honest, or certainly not when I was growing my photography business. I don't know, and this is with the greatest of respect to all my amazing mentors and coaches that I had at the time who helped me, but they were coming from a very different place. They weren't mums, they weren't single parents. They had another parent at home whose role was to help with that. And I don't mean that with any disrespect, but there was all about here's how to build business. There wasn't as much in there about here's how to build a business that fits your life. Here's how to build a business that supports you. And I think it needs to be talked about more. I do hear it more now, but back then it wasn't as big.
Yeah. Well, and the principles that we're going to talk about today, whether you're a single parent or not a single parent, or whether you're even a parent, these are all really, really critical, helpful ways to get that balance back in your life. So I'm really excited because I think I'm going to take some notes today because it's still a work in progress. I think it always is. So how do we identify where to even start with all of this?
Oh boy. And it's a great question because when you are in the middle of all the chaos and you're wondering where to even, what to do first, it can feel really overwhelming, to actually go and take some time out. But my advice on this is to go and think about everything you're doing now. If you have the dedication or the commitment, you can actually use time tracking tools to actually work out what you are doing. Where are you spending your time? And when I did that, it was a huge insight. It was like, boy, oh boy, these are things. Once you start identifying what's taking your time, then you can start thinking about how you can minimize the time spent on that or how you can get some help. But you really have to identify where you are right now, what's taking your time, what's stressing you out. Sometimes that balance is actually a mental balance. Sometimes there might be things where it's just adjusting the way we think about something. It's like I had these massive stories in my head that I had to get rid of about what a mother should do, what my expectations of myself were that I had to change. So you might even look at identifying what you're believing about your current situation, because it might not actually be that bad. It might just feel bad because of the beliefs that you're holding about it. And that's a huge one. And like I say, and like you say, not just for parents, but for anyone, it's like, okay, I should be where I should be further along by now, or this should be easier. That's stories we tell ourselves. But the actual practical steps are take some time out. Just, if you can track that time, there are some amazing tools online. If you're working on a computer, that it's going to be a lot easier, and start identifying what needs to change. Because if you're just looking at the situation and go, this is really hard, but you're not really drilling into it, then nothing's going to change because you don't know where to start. You don't know what needs to change. For me, so I had some huge things. It was like trying to find getting stuff more done at home and less time, and simplifying at work. So it was like these two very different areas that I had to really drill into. And when I did, everything changed. So that's my
And that exercise of tracking your time, I think a lot of people brush it off. They think, oh no, I know what I'm doing. I know I'm spending too much time on this, or I'm probably when you actually do the exercise. So please, if you're listening, do the exercise. When you actually do it, you will be surprised at things you thought you were spending a lot of time on and maybe weren't, and vice versa. One thing I had to change when I started doing that is I would go on my phone to legitimately do something. I needed to post something on Instagram, or I needed to check a text a client had sent me or something. But as soon as I pick up that phone, I forget what I was going to do. And 20 minutes later, I'm scrolling through Facebook.
oh my God.
So I had to actually stop. If I have a legitimate thing I need to go to my phone for, if it can wait, I'll actually write it down and then I'll do it all in a batch later with an actual intention to do it. And it saves me, honestly, it's probably 45 minutes a day that I would go down a rabbit hole and I'd get lost and forget even why I was there. So it's a big eye opener to do that exercise and see where that time is going.
Absolutely. And actually, you just hit on something that was really key, that distraction, like especially with our phones. I'll go over to look at a post I saw in a group that was helpful, like an answer to a question, but all of a sudden I'm scrolling, or I have my notes on my phone, my to-do list is on my phone. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I wonder what's happening in the news today. And like you say, that distraction is so key. But what you said was you have to write it down. And that is key. When you can have a really clear to-do list that's not a million pages long, and there's ways to break it down, and I'll go through that in a moment, where you're just focusing on a few things, like one thing at a time and a few things a day, and just getting really crystal clear. Because once you've identified your time being spent, then you can start to focus on what you need to be doing and how you can do that better and easier. And that's simply by writing it down, keeping that, like actually being focused on what you need to do.
So if so we track our time, we figure out what our expectations are versus reality. And I think that's another strike against social media there, because you get everybody's highlights reel and you think that's what you need to be doing too. And we need to unpack that. I think that's a whole a whole podcast on its own. You stepping away from the highlights reel. So after we've done that, what sort of actions can we take to get that balance back and to save some time?
Cool. Once you've really identified the areas that are like of the most stress, a lot of the time we're looking purely at our business, but we actually need to also look at outside of our business. And it's like, okay, how can I simplify this? So, for example, in my business, I took some time and I worked out the different areas and the different tasks within each area. So you have to get really systemized and really drill into the details. I am not naturally a detail person. So this was really quite challenging for me. And it took me quite a while. I have a big picture overview of everything. So going into the nitty gritty was really tough. But once I did, it made the difference. And so I would go into my business and say, okay, what are the areas, like the key areas of my business that need to be managed as if I already had my team? What are the tasks in each of those areas that I'm doing? And can I do each one differently? So that was like basically systems. Systems save so much time. And it's really overwhelming when you're starting a new business to actually take that time to do it. But trust me, it's so worth it. I'm in a new business now. So I'm actually in this place again right now of starting afresh. I'm only 12 months in and I'm having to do all this again. But this time I know how to do it. So it's much simpler. But look at the things at home. So for me, some of the things at home that really made a huge difference was I got a cleaner. I couldn't afford a cleaner, but I made it work because the thought of coming home at the end of the day and cooking dinner for a tired little boy who didn't want to eat, thought of doing lunches for the next day, and then cleaning my house. It just was too hard. Having someone come in once a week just took so much of a mental load off me. Once a week, I'd come home and my house was clean and my laundry was done, and it was a game changer. I put in a dishwasher. Things like that actually meant that because my home life felt a lot easier, just those little things, I wasn't having to worry about it. I could be more present for my son, which started to take off a little bit of that pressure. And then I had more to give my business. So I feel like sometimes, even though we're talking about business, we need to come back to outside the business first and then work back in, if that makes sense. Maybe that's just my way of working, but it certainly made a huge difference for me. And then I started to make progress. And then things in my business. So I've actually got a list of things, and most of the things are at home that made all the difference at work. But then at work, it's about looking at, okay, do I need to do this? Or can, for example, as a photographer, do I need to be doing all the production and the packaging and the shipping and getting the orders to my clients? It's quite a big job. And it's a job that can feel quite hard because you've already photographed the people, a week or two ago. You've moved on. Or can I give that to my supplier? Can they just do everything for me and ship it directly to my client? There was a game changer. I was like, oh, okay, I'll just do that. So little things like that, just identifying where you can get things off your plate. It just helps so much.
And I think especially when we're starting in our businesses and we're doing all the things and we're watching the budget, right? So many women are bootstrapping it with their own financing or they have no financing at all. And I think we tend to pinch the pennies and cost ourselves more in the long run. And I do it quite often, even now when I'll look at something and I'm doing something and I'm like, hang on a second. How much do I need to pay somebody to do this? And whether it's cleaning the house or whether it's something in the office. Now, if I had that extra hour or 2 hours or 3 hours back today, how much money could I make by making that extra call or, putting together that marketing strategy? So where's the value? And sometimes it comes back and it's like, no, you know what? You really need to do that thing because you cannot make that money back in an hour. And sometimes I go, this is ridiculous. I need to get somebody else to do this. And I think we have to look big picture. And again, when you're first starting out, you don't always have the budget, but you really need to look at, your time is money too. And where can you get that back so that you can be building your business and making that money back for sure.
Yeah, 100%. So the first way to look at getting more time in your business is to look at how you're scheduling and how you're working. So before you even outsource, before you even look at, do I invest in having someone help me, look at how you're working. So once you've done your time blocking and you've time management, you've tracked your time. Now you can say, well, okay, I'm doing, and I'll use the example of photography again, because that was my example. Okay, well, I'm doing a shoot, like a photo session, several times a week on different days. And then I'm doing other tasks throughout the day. And I might be doing production, I might be doing retouching, I might be doing a sales session. And each time you change between each of those tasks, it's actually called context switching. Every time you do that, you lose 25 minutes of productivity. And it's like, if you're context switching 4 or 5 times a day, there's a few hours easily lost just by the way you're working. So before you start looking at help, start looking at how you can structure your time better. For example, photographing all your sessions in one go on one day. If you do 4 sessions a week, put them in one day rather than over 4 days. If you do for retouching or for jobs, you want to put all the same sorts of jobs in the same time. So you're doing them when you're in that mindset, you're in the zone, you'll get things done a lot quicker. You're not going back and forth, turn off the phone, all those things. Social media, no matter what business you're in, social media takes up a lot of time. Even if you are good at not scrolling, blocking that time out and doing your whole month social media in one day.
Yeah.
And
And then you've got all of your equipment set up, you've got your programs open, everything is all ready to go.
it's there. And you'll find that just by scheduling and batching, you will save, hours and hours a week. For me, it saved me about 10 hours a week. So that was huge. That I know it's huge. And most people I work with, if I can get them to schedule their time better, they can save a lot of time. So that's the first thing. But then the next thing is thinking, okay, well, I've scheduled everything and I've got everything stacked as much as I can, and I'm being as productive as possible. The next thing is, okay, do I need to get something off my plate? Do I need to outsource something, or can I? Now, if you have the funds, start with the thing that gives you the most pain in your business, the thing that really stresses you out the most. Get rid of it, because it's probably the thing that you're not the best at doing anyway. So there's a lot of education out there about how to get people in your team. You don't need to hire locally. There are amazing people in, for example, the Philippines, where you're supporting them and their family, but it's actually not a huge expense for you. So it's like a win-win. You're doing something really powerfully good for someone else, but at the same time, it's not a huge cost to you financially. So if you can do that, I highly recommend that. Or you can get amongst business groups and find out if people want to, because as new businesses, we all can't afford to do everything or outsource everything, but we've all got different skills. And so if you know people who are really good at, say, creating a landing page, but you're really good at maybe doing graphic design, maybe there's a way to actually just help each other. Now, that's a bit of a longer process because you have to network and build those relationships, but I don't see any harm in that, because then everybody's helping each other. So that's a great way to do it as well. But
And you're
oh,
building your network at the same time. You're building that network too. So
100%. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my business was very much a local business when I had my photography. So it was, bricks and mortar. And so I belonged to some local networking groups, and that, we all helped each other, which was fantastic. But if you're working internationally or you're working online, then there's so many more people you can connect with and see if you can help each other in that way. So I'm huge on collaborations like that.
yeah. Yeah. And I think that's genius, using it not just to, like say, not just to build your network, but to also save yourself some money in the long run and get some services, because whatever they do, yes, I can build a landing page, but if that's your specialty, you can probably do it in less time than I can too, right? So that's where that real savings of, even though I'm going to trade a service for you, what's going to take me much less time than it would take you, then we're getting the value there and getting some time back. That's great.
Absolutely. I think the biggest challenge, though, for a lot of especially newer businesses or younger businesses who haven't hired people yet, is actually, yes, the financial cost is one, but it's actually the mental challenge of letting go.
Mm.
Oh, this is my baby. I have to do this. No one else can do it my way. No one else knows my branding like I do. No one else knows, like, for example, in photography, no one else knows my retouching style like I do. And so sometimes it's a bit of a mental journey to actually let go of something and realize that if you can do this, you can train someone else to do this and give you your time back. And when you do let things go, and I really recommend a lot of business owners really consider thinking about where they are best to invest their money when they start making enough money to bring in some help, where that money is best invested for them. Because when you get those tasks off your plate, one, they're going to be done better a lot of the time, or as well as you do if you are teaching someone how to do it. But it's going to give you that time where you could do another sales call, or you could take on another client, or, you can actually start driving your business forward. You can start focusing on your marketing to grow your business. So even though it's a cost, it's actually much more of an investment. The biggest month I ever had in my business at my studio was a month where I had nothing to do with that business at all. I mean, obviously I was there, we were preparing it for sales. So I was working on that, but I wasn't working the operations. I had an entire team. And they blew that month out of the park. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like, I
You didn't
did
even need
nothing.
me.
You don't need me. I was on holiday with my son and I'm getting these messages at the end of the month telling me about the sales that had just happened and the month's total. We weren't aiming to do that big a month. It was nearly double our normal monthly turnover. And I did nothing. And it's the old saying that the less you do, the more you make. And I really do believe, I mean, it takes time to get to that point, but if you can start working towards it, it makes life so much more exciting because you're like, wow, I can actually get people who can help me grow without me having to do all the things.
And that's the point, right? That's why you're not building a business because you want to work more. That's not why we're all building businesses, right? Eventually you want to be doing the high level stuff and not the day-to-day stuff. And if you're somebody out there it just made me think of this book. If you haven't read it yet, if you're struggling with stepping out of your business and really working on it rather than in it. There's a book called The E-Myth, and it's a classic, and it's a little dated. Some of the references in it, and it is a little bit dated because it is an older book, but it is all about doing exactly that, right? It's about taking each position or each role in your company and systemizing things and really slowly backing yourself out of the business so that it doesn't rely on you to do all the things, which is it's really great reading. It's called The E-Myth. We'll link something to it in the show notes for you because it's a must read, I think, when you're getting started.
100% agree with that. It's a brilliant book. And certainly it's on my bookshelf behind me right now. And it was part of where I got this understanding.
There's some gold in there too.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
all right. So back to the list of things. So we've figured out where our time is going. We have figured out what's kind of blocking us as far as what we think we should be doing, right? And we're looking at how we can streamline things. Where do we go from there?
All right. So then it's a case of actually making things work for you. I was never any good with like the boundaries and the kind of the higher level stuff. I was like, no, I need actionable steps that I can take right now. I don't need it became that helped me create the mental processes behind it. So little things like the first one I'm going to say is no matter where you are in your business, no matter how busy you are, how you choose to work, making sure you have about 10 minutes a day. I find midday is really good for that. Where you get away from your computer and you actually go and sit outside if it's a nice day, or you go for a walk and you just have, or you have a cup of tea outside or a cup of coffee. In my case, I'm a coffee addict, and you're just like fully present. You don't have to take your phone. You're not thinking about work. You just have 10 minutes. It's not long, but that can make all the difference just to be present, just to have that break, that mental break. So that's one thing, regardless. And that will, even though you have to think, oh, I'm so busy, I can't possibly take my lunch away from my desk or anything like that. It's like that will actually fuel you to come back and have a bit more energy and focus to carry on. So that's really important. Some things that you can do both at home and in business is plan ahead. I am a massive planner, and then reverse engineer the results that you want. So, I would start with a month. What are all the things that have to happen this month? What are the appointments I need to be at? What does my son need to be ready for? What do I need to do in my business? What needs to happen at home? Do I need to call a plumber to get that tap fixed? You just write down this massive big brain dumping list, or two if you want to separate them to home and business. And then you're going to separate them out into weekly amounts. And even look at it and go, does this actually need to happen? Is this actually urgent? Can that go into the next month? So pre-planning, I just think, and it comes down to what you said earlier about writing things down, but it's taking it to that next level, writing it all down, but not in one big long list, which is overwhelming and is not helpful. But it's about breaking it down to what are the three things that need to happen today? And if I get those three things done, today's been a success. You're not trying to do 30 things, it's just three. And that's really, really important because that's going to take away the overwhelm. But you know that as you sort of cross off each day, you're making more progress because you're being methodical, you're being consistent. Same thing at home. I go and put everything in my Google Calendar. As soon as the email comes in from school that there's a sports day or a mufti day or whatever, it's in my calendar, it's in my Google Cal with all my client appointments, so I can see where I need to be or what my son needs to do in advance. Because the biggest problem I had at the beginning, and I think a lot of business owners can relate to this, is that we're so busy and there's so much to do and there's not enough time, and we're constantly in reactive mode. We're like working really hard and then things come up and it throws us backwards because we weren't prepared for it. And that's really stressful. So the more that you can plan ahead, and actually itemize each item and, break it down to 3 things a day. Even having another little, like a separate list on a day of like things I can do in half an hour, like 2-minute tasks that can be done in half an hour, and actually going, okay, well, I've got half an hour. I'm going to do all those little tasks. I'm going to quickly, ring that plumber, and I'm going to quickly go and grab my son's library book because it has to go back to school tomorrow. All those little wee things, and you can block them, which leads into the next thing, which is time blocking, where you're actually going to put it on your calendar and go, okay, between these hours, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and this, and then I'm going to look up. I'm going to turn off my notifications, turn off my phone, make sure I've got a glass of water so I don't have to get up to, actually focus fully on that, because that's how you're going to get things done. You can get more done in less time just by being focused. And that's huge. So I get really passionate about that. So I've only really just kind of nailed this in the last couple of years. It took me a while, but since I've been working more from home, it's been a lot easier. It's like, okay, great. I can get this done. I'm not having people interrupt me all the time going, hey, Kim, how do I do this?
Oh
So,
no, I love, and I go on about it too all the time. The time blocking, just for everything, whether it's just for getting your tasks done, for exactly as you said, you turn everything off. I have 2 hours. Here's the thing that needs to get done, and nothing else happens unless that gets done. And also putting things on your calendar that are important and tend to get pushed aside, like business development. I tell everybody you need to have at least a couple hours a week that are blocked for business development, right? That's your time. And if you don't do that, there's fires to put out and there's emergencies and it keeps getting put off and put off and put off. And it's so critical to your business. And if you don't block it, it often doesn't happen. So I love that. I also really like how you look at the whole, quite often when people talk about life and business balance, they try and separate the two, and that this is the business here and this is the life here, and we're gonna get this in balance. But you're looking at really holistically and you know what, it makes sense. You're not two people, you're one person. And one of the beautiful things about having your own business is that you can mix the things. You can do something in the middle of the day, for your son's school. You can that does cross over, and it does in my life as well. I couldn't possibly separate the two things. And it's interesting how you look at that. And I really like how you do that because I think that's more realistic. Don't you?
well, I think it's life. I mean,
Yeah.
we do have all these different parts of life and they do blend. It's all very fluid.
Mhm.
I think if we wanted to be structured and compartmentalized every day, we're probably going to find we're trying to, I don't know, it's too rigid. Well, for me, it is. So I learned to accept. And I think acceptance is a huge thing, especially in the last few years. We've had a lot of disruption. So even if we were able to have a separate office and a separate home, with the pandemic, many of us have found suddenly we are working from home, even if we're not used to it. I mean, I love working from home, so it's not a problem. But a lot of parents have had to find that balance, and it's just fluid. So by blocking out that time and going, okay, this is my work time, and I'm going to get things done, and this is my family time. So a little thing that I do that really helps me come back into balance is every Monday after school, I pick up my son on a Monday at 3 o'clock because sometimes he has after school activities and things like that where we don't really get to be together. Is that's our time. We might go to a playground, we might go for a walk, we might just go to a cafe and have a coffee, or he has his hot chocolate. Little things like that, which a lot of people might take for granted. I just find so precious because for so long I couldn't do it. And that's my time. And that helps me come back into balance to go, okay, I know I'm working hard. I know that I've got a lot on my plate, but this is what really matters. And so long as I get those couple of hours, a couple of times a week with my wee boy, where we're actually doing something together, I'm okay. I'm good. And it is a holistic thing. You must look at the whole thing together. As I said before, there's no point having a great business if everything outside of it is suffering. No amount of money is worth not watching your children grow up.
And I absolutely agreed. And taking that time and again, time blocking it really and focusing specifically, I think is really at the end of the day, if you take the emotion out of it, is actually more efficient anyway. Because with my kids, if they're coming in and asking me things and I'm feeling guilty because I'm not where I said I would be, and it's just, I need 5 more minutes, I need 5 more minutes, it takes me 10 times longer to get through the thing I was trying to get through anyway than if I just stopped and did what I needed to do for half an hour, spent the quality time with him. Then his cup is filled, he's satisfied, he's going to do his own thing for a little while, then I can focus on the thing I need to do. And I think we so often, and it's again with the multitasking, we're trying to be in all the places, we're trying to do all the things, and we're drawing it all out far longer than it needs to take, and we're not doing it as well as we could.
Oh, I think multitasking is a lie. I don't think it exists. I think it's just a fallacy we tell ourselves to make us feel better about trying to do too much at once. One thing at a time.
Yeah.
Just one thing. Just focus on that one thing. Okay, my child is here now. I'm going to focus on him. Okay, I need to do, this work project. And maybe I need to block out that extra time to do that. And in the case of a family, maybe that means that my son, might go and stay an extra night at his dad so that I can get it done.
Mm.
But then when he comes back, I'm like, okay, now I'm back with my son again. It's fluid. Some days are going to be easier than others. Some days are going to feel like, yeah, I'm on top of it. And other days are like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. Tomorrow's a new day. And we can plan it again. But again, with time blocking, with anything like that, the more that you can plan it in advance and then just simply reverse engineer it. Okay, even if you go down to the weekly, I like to look at a 90-day and then a 30-day and then weekly. So I'm a bit of a geek like that. But if that feels too hard, just start with a week on a Sunday night. Just write down all the things that you're going to focus on and you're going to prioritize, and focus on also, this is something I haven't talked about, focus on the things you're not going to do. What are you going to let go? Like, is it actually that bad if your floor goes unvacuumed for a day? Although since you've told me about the automatic vacuum cleaner, nothing.
Life changing, life
Oh my
changing.
gosh, I love this idea. Any way that you can make your life simpler and easier, do that. But there are some things, maybe it's okay if the house is messy for a couple of days.
Yeah.
Don't be just up. Just go, okay, it's not important. This is important. Spending time with my son is important. Or getting this project done so we can actually make some income is important. And it's sort of like just letting go of those expectations a little bit that you have on yourself.
Look at tasks that are just going to repeat, right? You're going to do the laundry and the laundry's going to be dirty again. You're going to clean the house. It's not like it's going to stay clean. It's going to be dirty again. So instead of doing it every week, doing a full house clean, what if I did it every 2 weeks? Well, now I've got 50% of my time back. So that's a great tip. Now you've got a special cheat sheet for us to download, which has got all sorts of tips on it. So I'm going to put the link to that in the show notes, but have you got one more from the list that you can share with us? Maybe one of your favorites that we can put on our list?
Well, I have, but it's one that it's kind of not really a task.
Okay.
Something that will make the most difference, and that is to prioritize sleep. Make sure you're actually putting sleep on that calendar for you. Set yourself a time to go to bed and actually set in that routine, because sleep, once I started sleeping, I mentioned earlier that I never did. In those early years, my son would literally be out 5 or 10 times a night. It was horrific. But now it's like, oh, wow, because I started to prioritize it and he grew up a bit more. When you've had a good night's sleep, everything is possible the next day. You wake up and you're like, okay, I'm a superhero. I can do this. Everything can be worked out from this point because I've had sleep and I can think clearly. So even though that's not really a to-do list or a hack, I don't think we all prioritize that enough, but it makes a huge difference. So that's my one extra thing. But I've got a whole list. I've got some stuff at home and some stuff at work. We'll pop that in for you. And yeah, hopefully it's of help.
Oh, that's amazing. Hey, you know what? Sleep, anytime that makes it on my to-do list, I'm in. I'll never apologize for adding that to my list. I love it. All right. So before we go, one thing I always love to ask is, because you're obviously been an entrepreneur for years, so you've got some great advice. We've got a lot of newer women founders that listen to the podcast. What's your best bit of advice for women that are just starting out on their journey, besides the stuff that we've talked about already today?
Awesome. Just make sure that you're planning your life as well as your business. It's all very well. I think we get into that hustle mode or that entrepreneur mode. We get excited about what's possible in our business and we go for it, but plan your life first. Plan your life. What does that look like? Keep reminding yourself, why are you doing this really? It's not just for the money or the success or the sense of achievement. There's something much bigger in there. And so making sure that you're really planning your ideal dream life, because I didn't do that in the beginning. So I know from experience what a huge cost that is. But I think if you do that, you'll always stay focused on why you're doing what you're doing. And it will make the business on those tough days a lot easier.
Your fuel. Well, thank you for that. So we're going to put the link for that cheat sheet for our listeners in the show notes. And if you're watching on a platform where you haven't got the show notes, sometimes you don't, You can grab it at the podcast website, which is onestepempire.com. Onestepempire.com. That's where you'll find all of the episodes. You'll find all the links for this show as well as all the other show notes as well. So we will see you there. And I just want to say thank you, Kim. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing this with us today. I think you have just made a huge difference to a ton of women. So I appreciate you being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been great to chat.